asked by Sandra to give a little bit of an overview of an organization that I helped found and now chair, which is called Gap Filler in Christchurch. And I must admit, I've been, as many people in Christchurch, so kind of navel-gazing and self-absorbed lately with our own little problems that I don't really have a good sense. And can I just ask, how many of you are at all familiar with the Gap Filler initiative in Christchurch? Okay. Cool. So we began as an organization actually after the September quake, September 2010. And we were facing a lot of this. This photo was actually taken in October 2010. And what we had were lots of spaces where buildings had been demolished. This was actually the site of my favorite Mexican restaurant. And you had a lot of people, landowners, property owners, who were tied up in insurance battles and EQC struggles, and you had sites like this that were fenced off and out of bounds. And I guess that's something that we wanted to challenge. I really didn't like that idea that the red tape, the bureaucracy, and or just the workings of private capital that give property owners certain rights would permit this sort of situation citywide, where we have lots of land lying vacant, fenced off, that no one can access. And so we actually approached the property owners and sought permission to use their sites. And our very first project, we turned this site into just a funny little kitschy garden, just scrounging whatever materials we could. And we opened it to the general public and just made it a space where people could come and bring a picnic. And we had musicians and whatnot. And we put a call out just asking if there would be any bands willing to pay. We couldn't pay them anything, but willing to play and contribute something to the recovery of the city. And over the course of a 2-week period where we occupied this site, we had something like 41 bands play, and various puppetry performers, and poetry readings, and circus arts, and all sorts of people just bubbled up from the community. People who otherwise, I guess, didn't have an official role in the rebuild or the recovery of the city, but who wanted to offer something. And so I guess we didn't realize what we'd started, and sorry, this is this reach here. Would
you like to have a pair of hands?
Yeah, no, I'll be all right. So we had some live music, we had some puppetry performances, and we had surprisingly big crowds turn out day and night. And so we decided to carry on, and we made, I guess, a decision that disappointed quite a lot of people when we undertook our second project, which was to do something entirely different, because the kind of music community and performing arts community wanted us to do more of the same. But we did a second project, which was just a poster display on the wall of a bare site that had been exposed. And these were actually before-after images. I'm sorry if you can't see them very well, but this was actually images taken in Berlin just after the Berlin Wall came down, and then the photographer went back 10 years later to the exact same spot and took another photograph so you could compare the either heritage, reconstruction, or demolition, or whatever. So it was a bit of a provocation, I guess, to the city of Christchurch and how much they valued or not the heritage. After the February earthquake, the situation was considerably different. We weren't quite as upbeat and actually didn't know whether we should carry on at all. And most of our organization was kind of mobilized through social media, and so we put a call out through Facebook and others and asked people, is there any place for this anymore? Do you want us to carry on? And we got a resounding yes. And in particular, because all of the cinemas in Christchurch, in Central City anyway, were badly damaged and subsequently demolished, we got asked to run some cinema projects. So we went out into the suburbs and we occupied another vacant site and did a few bands in the evening, and some late-night film screenings projected right onto the bare wall that had been exposed by the demolitions. And I'll just very quickly run you through a couple of our other projects just to give a sense of the breadth of the project. There was an improvised dance performance on that same site. This is the now infamous book fridge, or what we call the Think Differently Book Exchange. This is quite silly. We just took an old commercial refrigerator and we placed it on a vacant site with a park bench there and a path of pavers leading up to it. And we put a call out to the community and asked people to contribute books that in some way it provoked them to think differently, and change their way of thinking. And we stocked the fridge with books and we left them there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and people can come and take a book, leave a book, what have you. And at that opening event, we had a pretty good turnout, and a lot of people said, you know, so who's going to lock the fridge every night? or are you going to take all the books out and put them back in the morning or something? And actually, we got a bit nervous and wondered if this was just a stupid idea. But like all of our ideas, they're social experiments of a sort. And we don't know how long they're going to last. And in fact, you know, the book fridge has been knocked over once, the glass shattered, but by the time we even heard about it, someone from the community had been there, had picked it up, had replaced the glass with a Perspex front that they had in their garage and whatever. So it's just an amazing kind of community social experiment, and I'm happy to say that it's still there. It lasted through the winter, and it's been about 15 months now. And we go back and check on it, and I swear to you, every 3 or 4 days you go, and you won't recognize a single title in there because it's actually getting used that much. So, just really exciting experiments. In the port town of Littleton, one of the very prominent sites there, I mean, they lost an awful lot of, basically their whole main street. And so we managed to get a license on one of the prominent sites along the main street there, and involved lots of community groups and built what we call the Littleton Petanque Club. So we made a petanque pitch and just generally another public space, public garden, as a group of volunteers. And just a community space, and actually about 2 months ago now, the city council actually purchased this site from the private landowners and have declared that they're going to make it the new town square of Littleton. So. And the interesting thing about that is that, I mean, I don't know how well you can tell here, but we just created kind of the framework for a space. And what happens is every couple of weeks someone else comes along and contributes something of their own. Someone builds a sandbox and leaves a few toys for kids, or you know, brings their own furniture or whatever. And it's just that wonderful space that people have embraced. And by and large, council parks aren't like that. You don't know anyone turn up at a council park and build a sandbox for their neighborhood. And yet there's something about this site. We don't tell people, please build a sandbox, but something about the site invites them to do so in the same way that something about the council says. So just an odd irony that city council are purchasing this site and retaining it as town square, and actually people are a little bit uneasy about that because they don't know if the council's notion of public will be as public in practice as what our site has been. We created, this was a site where the best vintage cycle shop in Christchurch used to be. And this was kind of our first, this was our first big project after we actually got a bit of funding and didn't have to fully scrounge. And so we commissioned a small team of engineers to develop a cycle-powered cinema system. and we screened a whole range of cycle-themed films on the site It's an old cycle safety video from the National Film Unit that trained up chimpanzees to ride bikes. And it was really important for us that we didn't just have stationary bikes there, but actually people rode their own bicycles in and then locked them into these specially welded frames so that they were actually generating power using their own bikes. This is a funny one that we did just about 6 weeks ago or so, again in Littleton. A Brazilian architect approached us, and he had this project where he'd done all the work himself, designing and building this structure, and he wanted to offer it to the public, but he didn't kind of have a way to do so, a means to do so. So this is the basic structure. It's kind of based on a Native American architecture.
I was supposed to be the first one to go. I know I always used to kid you. Are you going first? You know I never meant none of that. And that morning when you was laying there, I was shaking you and yelling at you to go down and fix my breakfast. I didn't know. You had no right to leave me that way. Without giving me just one more chance to say I love you. She was the one who was supposed to stay down here with you, you know. Not me. 'Cause I ain't no good at none of this.
Straight ahead, please. Straight ahead. Ladies, right in front of each other. Girls.
Ladies in the corner.
So when we cuddle close tonight, I'll snuggle up and hold your hand. Just you and me and 33 big boogers from a big brass band. And when it's dark, we'll light the lamps and draw the sofa near the fire. A cozy spot, oh I forgot, there'll probably be a heavenly choir. There's 5, they don't mind standing, they'll be quite happy on the bathroom landing. They're singing of my love for you, they're singing of my deep desire. If I'm stood up, I'll have a couple of women from the heavenly choir. Let's turn out the light, let me hold you tight. Let's kiss and watch the fire go low. We won't be swept away